The town of Willow Creek was always shrouded in mystery, its dense forests whispering secrets of the past. Legends whispered of dark rituals performed by the settlers who first claimed the land, and every Valentine's Day, the whispers grew louder. Among the locals, there was a tale passed down from generation to generation, a tale of the Valentine's Day sacrifice. It was said that on this cursed day, the forest demanded a sacrifice to appease its hunger for blood. Many dismissed it as mere folklore, but others dared not venture into the woods when February 14th approached. Sarah, a young woman with a fascination for the macabre, scoffed at the superstitions. She had grown up in Willow Creek and had never encountered anything more terrifying than a stray deer. With Valentine's Day fast approaching, she decided to prove once and for all that the tales were nothing but fantasies born of overactive imaginations. Gathering her courage, Sarah set out into the forest on Valentine's Day Eve, armed with nothing but a flashlight and her skepticism. The trees loomed ominously overhead, casting long shadows that danced in the dim light. Despite her bravado, a sense of unease gnawed at her insides. As Sarah ventured deeper into the woods, she began to notice strange symbols etched into the trees. They seemed ancient, their meanings lost to time. Brushing them off as the work of pranksters, she pressed on, determined to reach the heart of the forest. Hours passed, and Sarah found herself disoriented, the trees seeming to shift and rearrange themselves when she wasn't looking. Panic began to set in as she realized she was lost, her flashlight barely cutting through the thick darkness. Just as fear threatened to consume her, Sarah stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an otherworldly glow. At its center stood a stone altar, moss-covered and weather-worn. Heart-pounding, she approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the clearing, ancient and ethereal. "Who dares trespass on this sacred ground?" Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. Before her stood a figure cloaked in shadows, its features obscured by darkness. "I mean no harm," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Only seek to unravel the mysteries of this place." The figure regarded her silently for a moment before speaking again. "You have trespassed on a night of great importance. The forest demands a sacrifice, and you have unwittingly offered yourself." Sarah's heart plummeted as the realization dawned on her. She had walked straight into the clutches of the Valentine's Day sacrifice. Desperate to escape, she turned to flee, but the shadows seemed to stretch and coil around her, trapping her in place. With a sinking feeling, she knew there was no escape. As the darkness closed in around her, Sarah closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable. But instead of pain and terror, she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. In that moment, she understood the true nature of the sacrifice. It was not an offering of blood, but of love. With a newfound resolve, Sarah embraced the darkness, allowing it to consume her completely. And as she vanished into the depths of the forest, her final thought was of the love she carried in her heart. The next morning, the townsfolk of Willow Creek awoke to find Sarah's disappearance shrouded in mystery. Some whispered of foul play, while others clung to the belief that she had simply gotten lost in the woods. But deep in the heart of the forest, among the ancient trees and forgotten rituals, Sarah's sacrifice had not gone unnoticed. And as the years passed, her legend grew, a testament to the power of love in the face of darkness. And so every Valentine's Day, the people of Willow Creek gather to honor the memory of Sarah, the girl who dared to defy the forest and found love in the most unexpected of places. For in the end, it is love that truly conquers all, even the darkest of horrors. In the heart of a small town nestled between dark forests and rolling hills, there existed a legend whispered among the locals. They spoke in hushed tones of a ritual that took place every Valentine's Day, one that promised to reveal true love, but at a sinister cost. It all began decades ago, with a young couple deeply in love. Their names were Anna and William, and they were inseparable. But as fate would have it, Tragedy struck on Valentine's Day. Hannah vanished without a trace, leaving William heartbroken and tormented by her disappearance. Legend had it that William couldn't bear to live without Anna and sought out a dark entity rumored to grant wishes. Desperate, he made a deal that would bind their souls together for eternity. But the price was steep. Every Valentine's Day, the entity demanded a sacrifice to maintain the bond. Years passed, and the town became accustomed to the ritual. Couples dared not venture out on Valentine's night, for fear of meeting the same fate as those before them. But as with all legends, some were drawn to the mystery, unable to resist the allure of true love, even at the risk of their lives. Among them were Sarah and Michael, a pair of star-crossed lovers who scoffed at the warnings. They believed their love was stronger than any curse, and they set out on Valentine's night to prove it. As the moon cast an eerie glow over the town, Sarah and Michael found themselves standing at the edge of the forest where Anna had disappeared so many years ago. Ignoring the sense of foreboding that gnawed at their hearts, they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. Deep in the heart of the forest, they stumbled upon an ancient clearing adorned with candles and strange symbols carved into the earth. The air grew thick with an otherworldly presence, and Sarah's skin prickled with unease. But Michael held her hand tightly, his resolve unwavering. As they approached the center of the clearing, they found a weathered tome bound in dark leather. With trembling hands, Michael opened the book and began to recite the incantation inscribed within its pages. The words echoed through the silent night, carrying with them a sense of power and dread. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and a swirling vortex of darkness materialized before their eyes. From its depths emerged a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes burning with an unholy light. "You seek true love," the entity hissed, its voice a chilling whisper. "But know this, true love comes at a price." Sarah and Michael exchanged a nervous glance but stood their ground, their hearts beating as one. "We are willing to pay any price," Michael declared, his voice filled with conviction. The entity's gaze lingered on them, its silent judgment weighing heavily upon their souls. Then, with a sinister smile, it nodded in acceptance. "Very well," it murmured, "but heed my warning. True love forged in darkness can never be broken." With that, the entity vanished into the night, leaving Sarah and Michael alone in the clearing. But as they embraced, a sense of unease settled over them, as if they had unwittingly unleashed something beyond their control. Unbeknownst to them, their declaration had set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of their lives. As the years passed, Sarah and Michael's love only grew stronger, defying the odds and overcoming every obstacle in its path. They married, had children, and built a life together that seemed almost too perfect to be real. But as Valentine's Day approached each year, a sense of dread descended upon them, reminding them of the darkness that lurked just beyond the surface. And try as they might to ignore it, they knew that their love came with a price, one they could never truly escape. Then, on the eve of their 20th Valentine's Day together, tragedy struck once more. Sarah vanished without a trace, leaving Michael alone and heartbroken, just as William had been so many years ago. Desperate to find her, Michael turned to the same dark entity that had bound their souls together. But this time, there was no deal to be made, no bargain to be struck. For Sarah's disappearance was not the work of any supernatural force, but rather the cruel hand of fate. In the end, Michael was left with nothing but memories and regrets, haunted by the ghost of a love that had once burned so brightly. And as he stood alone in the darkness, he realized the true cost of true love, a cost he would pay for eternity. In the small town of Cedar Creek, nestled in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, Valentine's Day held a sinister secret. It was whispered among the locals that on this particular day, the spirits of lost lovers roamed the forests, seeking retribution for the tragedies that had torn them apart. As the sun dipped below the horizon on Valentine's Eve, Sarah Michaels, a young photographer with a penchant for the macabre, found herself drawn to the legend. She had heard the stories since childhood, but had always dismissed them as nothing more than local folklore. However, as she stared out at the darkening woods from her bedroom window, an inexplicable curiosity gnawed at her. Ignoring the warnings echoing in her mind, Sarah grabbed her camera and ventured into the forest. The moon cast an eerie glow over the twisted branches, casting ominous shadows across the forest floor. Yet, Sarah pressed on, the thrill of the unknown driving her forward. As she wandered deeper into the woods, Sarah began to feel a presence, an unseen force watching her every move. Goosebumps prickled her skin as she snapped photos of the moonlit landscape, capturing the ethereal beauty of the night. But with each click of her camera, the feeling of unease grew stronger. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the silence, and Sarah froze in her tracks. She strained her ears, trying to discern the source of the noise, but all she heard was the pounding of her own heart. Then, just as quickly as it had come, the sound ceased, leaving Sarah standing alone in the darkness. Shaken but determined, Sarah pressed on, her footsteps echoing through the silent forest. She had almost convinced herself that she had imagined the noise when she heard it again, louder this time, followed by a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. Cautiously, Sarah followed the sound until she came upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. There, standing beneath a gnarled oak tree, was a figure cloaked in shadow. Instinctively, Sarah raised her camera, capturing the mysterious figure in a blur of motion. But as the flash illuminated the clearing, Sarah gasped in horror. Before her stood a woman, her face twisted in agony, her eyes empty voids staring into the abyss. Her once beautiful gown was tattered and torn, stained with the blood of centuries past. Frozen in fear, Sarah watched as the woman began to glide towards her, her movements graceful yet otherworldly. Panic surged through Sarah's veins as she turned to flee, but it was too late. The woman reached out with spectral hands, grasping Sarah's arm with a strength that belied her ethereal form. With a scream, Sarah tore herself free and ran blindly through the forest, her heart pounding in her chest. Branches tore at her skin, and roots threatened to trip her at every turn, but still, she pressed on, driven by sheer terror. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah burst through the trees and stumbled into the clearing where her journey had begun. Gasping for breath, she collapsed to the ground, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Sarah gathered her strength and made her way back to town. She tried to put the events of the night behind her, but the memory of the woman's haunting gaze lingered in her mind, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. Years passed, and Sarah tried to move on with her life, but the specter of that fateful Valentine's Eve haunted her dreams. Then, one day, as she was sorting through old photographs, she came across the images she had captured in the forest that night. As she studied the photos, a chill ran down her spine. In each one, she saw the figure of the woman, her face twisted in agony, her eyes pleading for release. And then, in the final image, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. Standing just behind the woman was another figure, barely visible in the shadows. But as Sarah zoomed in on the image, she gasped in horror. It was her own face, twisted in terror, staring back at her from the darkness. With a trembling hand, Sarah turned the photograph over and saw a message scrawled in a shaky hand. "Happy Valentine's Day, Sarah. Forever yours, Emily." And in that moment, Sarah knew that she would never truly escape the horrors of that Valentine's Eve. For the spirits of lost lovers never rest, and some bonds are destined to last for eternity.